welcome back to the Panic Room, everyone, and to a triple-ish book review today. I say triple-ish because two of the books are really short and one is kind of a graphic novel. It is a graphic novel. But I thought we could talk about them all in one video because you guys know how I roll when it comes to shorter stuff. I try to put them together in one video so that you guys don't get like 15 5-minute videos. So let's get started. So let's start with the graphic novel. I picked this up at the last library sale I went to, and it is all David Wiley's fault. He had talked about this ages ago now in a video, and I commented about it, and he was like, yeah, this really looks like something you would like. Well, then I found it at the library sale for 50 cents. Monstress! Take in that cover. Is that not beautiful? I love that. And let's see, it is by, well, this is volume 1, by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. You can see them right there. You guys know I'm terrible with names, so there you go. But this was really awesome. This is volume 1, so I'm positive there are probably at least 3 or 4 out by now. And you guys know I'm a sucker for artwork, and I pulled out 2 that I wanted to show you just to kind of prove my point, because I know not everybody digs on graphic novels or manga or any of that, but I wanted to show you guys this just so you could see what the horror flavor was like in this one. So here is the first one that I absolutely fell in love with. Check that action out. Look at that. Look at that. Is that not beautiful with the eye? And then we have this little number here, right? So you guys see we're dealing with a horror story right out of the gate. So just to give you guys a little bit of an overview, in this world, because this is volume 1, I'm sure there's way more to be learned here. In this world, you seem to have 2 warring factions. You have humans, and then you have this other group called the Archaics, I think. I hope I'm not butchering that. But they seem to be like almost these human-animal hybrids because there's a bunch of them. You know, and some of them have like fox ears or like rabbit ears or something like that. And they tend to have like, I think some of them have powers. I don't think all of them do. Again, I feel like there's a lot more to be learned here. This is just volume 1. So then you have your main girl right here that you see on the cover. And it seems like to me that she's on this mission to go after this group who they appear to be doing some kind of like experiments on the archaic people. And I don't really know exactly what they get from them. They seem like they're gaining some kind of a power from them of some sort. And when she goes after them, you know, because she is like, I think part archaic. I don't think she's fully archaic because that is one of her like strengths is that she looks human. And so she doesn't have to worry about like people catching her with ears or any of that shit. And you notice right off the bat, very first page, that she only has half of one of her arms. And that plays a role later. Yeah, a big role. So again, I don't want to give you a ton simply because I feel like this was a big like intro into this world. And it's not a hard read at all. I mean, you guys see, it's just like your basic graphic novel. Beautiful though. Excellent world building here. I really feel like that if you are at all into fantasy, like dark, is it dark fantasy? I guess it would be dark fantasy. That you guys would really enjoy this because you have, you know, people with powers, you know, which always gives me like fantasy vibes when I hear that, like witches, wizards, all that. But then you have this like complete dark side where, you know, people are being tested on and you have monsters, you know, very like eldritch terror shit coming out. And then you have our main girl who seems to be special in more ways than one. There's an entity that she has dealings with, and there's some family history here that is playing a role. And so I can really see where they could just take this for a million more books. But there's a lot here. And I'm really looking forward to, if I can find the other ones, you know, maybe diving in a little bit deeper because it was really well done. There's a whole world here. You know, you have like councils and all of this shit and, you know, like history about this war happening between these archaics and humans and the genealogies and stuff. It was really cool. Really cool. I highly recommend if you like that element of fantasy, you know, if you like that world building, I really think you're going to love this. Plus, you get the added bonus of it just being absolutely beautiful too. So, Monstress. Okay, so the next one is super short, but I definitely wanted to mention it here because she is a booktuber, and this was the story Fractals from author D.L. Tillery. Of course, I will have her information linked down below. So I first became acquainted with D.L. Tillery through the Lurking in the Dark anthology that we were both in. And she's a poet. She does dark poetry. It's like, wow, you know, why were we not friends like months ago? So I first became acquainted with her through that, and I found that she had this short story, so of course I jumped all over it. Guys, it's $1. It was $1, and it was worth it, I thought. Plus, you're supporting a booktuber. So I went, I downloaded it, and yeah, it was really cool. If you like creature stories, I can't tell you a ton. I can't tell you a ton. There's a couple that go like on this trip and something bad happens and she happens to take the bad thing with her inadvertently. If you are into like creature stories, if you have a love for, let's say, like cryptid type stuff, I really think you're gonna like it. D.L. Tillery does a wonderful job describing the setting. That was the thing that really leapt out at me. It's like a colder setting, and you guys know when you have these like extremes of weather, sometimes when an author does a damn fine job, you can almost feel it. And there were points in this story that I could almost feel it. You know, like the, I don't know, like the iciness of it. I mean, it's called Fractals, come on. Yeah, so I highly recommend. It's a short story. I mean, I think you could probably get it done in 45 minutes-ish. You know, it depends on how fast you read, but it's $1. You're supporting a booktuber. I think it's well worth it. And it was a fun story. It really was. If you were into creatures, highly recommend. Fractals by D.L. Tillery. Alright guys, so I saved the longest one for last. This is This House is Broken 2. It is the Evelyn story, what I have a tendency to call it. So this is actually the 4th book I've read from Dylan, and 3 of those, this one included, have been in this House is Broken series, where you are following this woman by the name of Evelyn. So I will link the video down below where I read the first part of the story, This House is Broken Part 1. And did it kick into high gear for this one? So I'm going to reiterate what I've said about this series. I love religious horror, one of my favorites. And I also really like mental horror. Dylan does a fantastic job, I think, in these books, especially when it comes to Evelyn, of kind of combining this whole idea of mental health or mental disorders of some sort. I'm not going to go any further than that because I don't want to ruin it for you. And religious horror. In this one, part 2, everything gets kicked up tenfold. And I think the reason for that is because you have everything that was set up in part 1 kind of coming to a head. And he really is not afraid to go there. So I'm going to put a little bit of a trigger warning here. If you are easily offended by people discussing religion in a negative light, this might not be for you. Because Dylan is not afraid to go there with his characters. There are characters in this book that are incredibly antagonistic towards religion, and rightfully so in a lot of ways. He explores the idea of, is it okay to be mad at an entire faith because of the actions of one person or a group of people? And I haven't seen that really tackled in a fiction book before now. It is intense. There is a lot of talk of various triggers. There's blood, there is some SA happening, things like that. So keep that in mind. But I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I'll say it for the rest of my life. The one thing I love about horror is that the gates are flung wide open. Everything is on the table, and Dylan does a wonderful job incorporating all of that freedom that horror gives you. And I understand that might be too much for some people, but for me, I thought it was very interesting to see that topic tackled. You know, you see this sometimes in like some nonfiction stuff about like the effects of cults and things like that, or the effects of harsh religious upbringing. Dylan takes that idea and marries it to a lot of horror. And I'm going to tell you guys some of the things that happened to these characters. I was like, what? Excuse me? Because you get introduced, there's a big shift that happens, I guess, as far as setting. If you read both books, you'll know what I'm talking about. The actions in book 1 really are kind of confined to one household, whereas in book 2, your characters kind of are spread out a little bit more. And, you know, that is another one of the reasons that the action is kicked up, because there's a lot more happening. There's a lot more action here. But I'm going to reiterate that I think Dylan does a really good job kind of incorporating this idea of the mental aspects of religion, how it affects a person, all of this. And I can really see, because I know Dylan does research for these books, and I can really see that shining in this book too, because I feel like the way he's describing one character in particular, he must have really had to kind of look into some of these like cult leaders and the mental aspects of what makes them so charismatic. Because he nailed it with one of the characters. This one character is so charismatic, it's like I was even starting to believe the shit he was saying, okay? So he really does a damn fine job. If you are into religious horror, I do recommend these Evelyn books, This House is Broken and This House is Broken Part 2. There is a prequel as well, which I highly recommend reading because it will give you a lot of background as to your main girl, Evelyn. And I know at the time of me filming this, Dylan is working on part 3. I have no earthly idea where part 3 could be going, but I am here for the ride. So, This House is Broken, part 2. So guys, that is it. Thank you for hanging out for another video. I really like these when I can talk about all these like little short books. I feel like you guys are getting more bang for your buck that way. But let me know down below if any of these sound interesting to you. If you've read any of them, you guys know that's the whole reason I'm here. I'm going to talk to you about them. So let me know. Let me know what you guys think about religious horror. You know, I'm kind of curious because that's a big one for me, and I know it is for a few of my friends here, but I would love to know your thoughts on that. You know, where do you stand on, you know, how much religion is too much in your horror books? So let me know down below. And guys, of course, if you like this, please hit like, hit subscribe. It would really help me out. And until next time, bye for now.